I'm thinking that one of the boundaries set for us is the idea of national power, of our national power, and of our national goodness, that we are the superpower in the world, and we deserve to be the superpower because we're the best and the greatest, and we have the most democracy and the most freedom, and that's why terrible things are done to us, because we are the best. That's kind of arrogant. And that also is a sign of the loss of history. And we need to be taken down a peg and taken down to the level of other nations in the world and other peoples of the world. And you need some history to be able to come down to earth and to see that the United States has behaved in the world like other imperial nations in the world. Not surprising. We have to be honest about our country. If we're going to be anything, if there's anything an artist should be, if there's anything a citizen should be, is to be honest, to be able to look at yourself, to look at your country as honestly and as clearly as you look at what people do elsewhere. And just as you can examine the terrible things that people do elsewhere, you have to be willing to examine the terrible things that were done here and done by our government. And Langston Hughes, some of you may know his work, great African-American poet, Langston Hughes, wrote a poem called Columbia. Columbia meant for him this country, the United States. As Columbia has, Columbus, Columbia, and that's us. He was addressing Columbia. He said, "My dear girl, you really haven't been a virgin so long. It's ludicrous to keep up the pretext. You're terribly involved in world assignations, and everybody knows it. You've slept with all the big powers in military uniforms, and you've taken the sweet life of all the little brown fellows in loincloths and cotton trousers. When they've resisted, you've yelled rape. Being one of the world's big vampires, why don't you come on out and say so, like Japan and England and France and all the other nymphomaniacs of power?" But it's very hard when you're in a rich and powerful country, and a country with, yes, great traditions in terms of, yes, the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. Although I would claim that our greatest traditions and our greatest experience, our proudest experience, come not from what our governments have done, but from what the people of the United States have done, what the citizens have done when they banded together to fight against slavery, what working people have done to change the conditions of their lives because the government wouldn't do anything to change the conditions of their lives. The government was sending the troops out and the police out and the National Guard out to shoot them down and club them down when they went out on strike to try to change the hours of their work or the conditions of their work. I have to think about what kind of country we want to be in the world, and whether it is really important for us to be a superpower, whether that's what we should take pride in, that we are the strongest, we are the richest, we have the most nuclear weapons, We have the most television sets and the most, cars and this and that. Is that the thing we want to be most proud of? And is that strength really strength? Or is it something else? One of the artists I think of when I think of somebody whose work is transcendent is Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22. If somebody right after World War II had written a book, a nonfiction book, pointing out the ambiguities in that good war, pointing out the bad things done by the supposed good guys in that good war. If somebody had written a book suggesting that the good war of World War II and the greatest generation were not necessarily the greatest, and this was not necessarily good, that it was much more complicated than that, because war corrupts everybody who engages in it. Even if you start off being the good guys and they're the bad guys, soon you begin to look like the bad guys, because that's what war does to everybody. Somebody had written a nonfiction book like this would have been very difficult in that glow that accompanied World War II. But you could write a novel like Catch-22, and slyly, an artist can be sly, and slyly point to things that take you outside the traditional thinking, and you can get away with it in fiction because people say, oh, well, it's fiction. But remember what Picasso said, art is a lie that tells the truth. Think about that. Art is a lie that tells the truth, meaning, right? Art doesn't, art goes away from reality, and it makes up something, it invents something, and what it invents may be more accurate about the world than somebody who gives you a 1, 2, 3 photographic picture of the world. So Joseph Heller was one of these people who used fiction to say things that probably couldn't be said easily in nonfiction. At one point, his protagonist, his crazy bombardier, Yossarian, crazy because he doesn't want to fly any more missions. He's had enough of war. That makes him crazy. If he wanted to fly and bomb and he'd be sane. But he's crazy. And at one point he's in a brothel in Italy, and he's talking to an old Italian man, and he's puzzled by what the man says, because the man says, oh, America will lose because she is so strong. Italy will survive because she's so weak. He wasn't talking about the war, losing or winning the war. He was talking about in the long run of history, America will lose because she's so strong. Italy will survive because she's so weak. It makes you think again about what is strength and what is weakness. And how the strong, by extending their strength onto every other place in the world, because they're so strong, become more and more vulnerable, and as a result, ultimately weaker. Yossarian also asks, when they're about to go out on a bombing run, do you guys realize that we're going to bomb a city that has no military targets, no Heller had been in the Air Force. He understood the nature of bombing and how so often in bombing you pretend that you're bombing military targets and you will believe it, but it's the nature of bombing that you never only bomb military targets. It's the nature of bombing. Bombing, no matter what they tell you, no matter all these generals, military experts who get up and they talk about smart bombs. Bombs are by their nature very dumb. And bombs, well, you just saw what happened in Afghanistan. One of our smart bombs hit a UN building and killed 4 UN workers whose job was removing mines from the land in Afghanistan. So what Yossarian said rings true, even today. There's so many examples of artists who have spoken out, either in their art or just as citizens. It's possible to speak out in your art, and Joseph Heller did it, and Kurt Vonnegut did it in Slaughterhouse-Five. Again, here's the good war, but Kurt Vonnegut writes about the bombing of Dresden, in which perhaps 100,000 civilians, talk about killing innocent people. 100,000 people die as a result of the British and American bombing raids over Dresden. Now, to write about that and denounce it in nonfiction would have been very, very difficult. Again, in that glow of the greatest generation in World War II, a glow which they keep bringing back to us to make any war that we're going through ennobled by its connection with World War II. But Vonnegut could write fiction about the bombing of Dresden, and a fiction, of course, which was very, very true. During the Vietnam War, artists spoke out in different ways against the war. Robert Lowell, the poet, was invited to the White House, and he refused to come. Arthur Miller, the playwright, was invited to the White House, and he sent a telegram to the White House. The telegram said, "When the guns boom, the arts die." The singer Eartha Kitt was invited to the Rose Garden. You've never been to the Rose Garden of the White House? There was it was one of those lovely social events taking place during the Vietnam War. And Eartha Kitt, who was just supposed to be a singer, just an artist, not paying any attention to the world, raised her voice and said, "Why are we in Vietnam?" It was shocking. An artist was not supposed to do that. But artists were doing all sorts of things at that time to show that they were citizens and they were thinking outside the boundaries, and that they were transcending the given wisdom. There was an artist named Seymour Chwast who did a poster which was reproduced and reproduced and reproduced all over. It was a very simple poster. It just said, "War is good for business. Invest your son." I recommend to you a book called The Indignant Eye, edited by Ralph Shikes. The Indignant Eye, and it's a book of commentary and drawings and etchings from the 15th century down to our time, about the artist as social critic. Goya and his all sorts of, 82 etchings on war, the disasters of war. Something worth looking at. There's great music that was brought forth during the Vietnam era by artists who insisted on not just being artists and musicians, but who were so moved by what was going on in the world they had to say something. And so Bob Dylan wrote his song, Masters of War. Now, if you haven't heard Dylan sing Masters of War, you should immediately rush out and get it. Masters of War. I'll just read a little of it. I'm certainly not going to sing it. Come, you masters of war, you that build the big guns, you that build the death planes, you that build all the bombs, you that hide behind walls, you that hide behind desks. I just want you to know I can see through your masks. You that never done nothing but build to destroy, you play with my world like it's your little toy. You put a gun in my hand and you hide from my eyes and you turn and run farther when the fast bullets fly. I'm skipping a few stanzas. You've thrown the worst fear that can ever be hurled, fear to bring children into the world. For threatening my baby, unborn and unnamed, you ain't worth the blood that runs in your veins. Let me ask you one question. Is your money that good? Will it buy you forgiveness? Do you think that it could? I think you will find when death takes its toll, all the money you made will never buy back your soul. And you get the impression that I'm against war. And that I think at a time when all the bugles are blowing for war and all the voices on television and the government spokesmen and the media people are not questioning, are getting in line. And they're not questioning, should we do this? They're questioning, how should we do this? Should we use ground troops or should we use the airplanes? And the trick in thinking transcendentally is to think, what questions aren't they asking? What are they assuming that we accept? And they're burrowing down into the question of, should we do it this way and should we do it that way, instead of asking the question, should we be doing this? And of course, I'm telling you all this at a time when it is, unpopular to speak against the bombing that is now going on. Because all these voices around us are telling us it's the right thing to do, it's the only thing to do. And they're saying that they're rushing from one truth, one undeniable truth, to a false conclusion. They're rushing from the undeniable truth that some fanatic group killed 6,000 innocent people in New York and Washington. They're jumping from that undeniable truth to, therefore, we must bomb. And that's where people need to be careful about these jumps that are made. Because the first thing is true, and then you have to be very, very careful about where you move from there. Because the next question to ask is, therefore, what shall we do? And not, well, we know what to do, because this is what we've always done. We've always met violence with violence. Well, if you had any sense of history, if you knew some history, you would look at the various instances in which we have met violence with violence and asked, what was the result? Or in which other countries have met violence with violence and asked, what was the result? And it would help to redefine the word terrorism. Because what happened in New York was an act of terrorism. But to isolate it from the history of terrorism will mislead you very dangerously. And this act of terrorism exploded in our faces because it was right next door, and we could see these people, and they were, right here. But there have been acts of terrorism going on for a long time all over the world. And the idea of bringing that up is not to diminish what happened, and not to minimize the terror of what happened in New York, but to enlarge our compassion beyond that. Otherwise, we will never understand what happened and what we must do about it. Because when you enlarge the question and define terrorism as, yes, the ugly killing of innocent people for some presumed political purpose, then you find that all sorts of nations have engaged in terrorism, as well as individuals and groups, and that there is such a thing as state terrorism, along with individual and group terrorism. And when states commit terrorism, that is, when nations commit terrorism, they have far greater means at their disposal for killing people than single individuals or groups. And the United States has been responsible for acts of terrorism. Now, it's difficult to say that. When you say that, people say, oh, you're trying to minimize what was done. No, not trying to minimize. Trying to enlarge. Trying to broaden our scope. Trying to understand. The United States and England have been responsible for the deaths of large numbers of people, of innocent people in the world. And it doesn't take too much history to see that, to think of Vietnam, to think of Laos and Cambodia, to think of Central America, to think of 200,000 dead in Guatemala as a result of a government that the United States armed and supported. I know all this is unsettling. We don't want to hear criticism of the United States government when we have been the victims of a terrorist act. But we have to think about terrorism in the largest sense and how we are going to stop it. And we have to ask the question, is bombing going to stop it? Or is further terrorism going to stop it? Because war is terrorism. Because war in our time inevitably involves the killing of innocent people. And it may not immediately be, can't match the killing of 6,000 people. No, we've only killed a handful of people in Afghanistan, but we've more than matched that at other times. And there are perhaps 1 million people who have died in Iraq as a result of sanctions that we have enforced and imposed. And it's not a matter of measuring, they killed more than us, so we killed more than them. We have to see all of these things as terrorist acts that have taken place in the world, and what can we do about it? And decide that you can't respond to one terrorist act with war, because then you are engaging in the same kind of thing that terrorists engage in. And that is, the thinking goes like this. Well, yes, innocent people died. Too bad. But it was done for an important purpose. It was collateral damage. You must accept collateral damage when you're doing something very important. That's how terrorists justify what they do. That's how nations justify what they do. Yes, so I'm asking all of us to transcend what is coming at us on all sides, and to think carefully and clearly. Because if we are all going to be herded into actions which are more dangerous, more dangerous even than what we are facing now. You know, then we will later regret the fact that we went all along silently and didn't raise our voices as citizens to ask, how can we get at the roots of this problem? And what can we do about it? And all of us can do something. Reading a work of another artist, a poet, Daniel Berrigan, longtime anti-war activist. Even after the Vietnam War, he continued struggling against war and militarism. And he wrote this poem in memory of a friend of his, a man named Mitchell Snyder, who had worked for the homeless in Washington, D.C., and then at a certain point worked for years and years and years for the homeless and became disconsolate at what the government was unable to do, even while the government was building jet planes and bombers and nuclear submarines and nuclear missiles, and the government didn't have enough money to take care of the problem of the homeless, and he became disconsolate, and he killed himself one day. And Dan Bergen wrote this in loving memory, Mitchell Snyder. Some stood up once and sat down. Some walked a mile and walked away. Some stood up twice, then sat down. I've had it, they said. Some walked 2 miles, then walked away. It's too much, they cried. Some stood and stood and stood. They were taken for fools. They were taken for being taken in. Some walked and walked and walked. They walked the earth, they walked the waters, they walked the air. Why do you stand, they were asked, and why do you walk? Because of the children, they said, and because of the heart, and because of the bread. Because the cause is the heart's beat, and the children born, and the risen bread. So, I will welcome your questions, discussion, arguments. All right? I'll try to see you if you raise your hand. Are there mics anywhere, or will I be able to hear people? Well, speak up so that everybody can hear you, okay?
Nick, do you want to help him moderate? Or? And if he could repeat the question.
Oh, okay. All right, just ignore me. Just go ahead. I'll just wave generally in your direction. Go ahead.
Okay, well, one thing I want to say is that I really like what Howard did have to say tonight, and if anybody here agrees with him, then I think that you have a real responsibility to tonight take on this war. You know, the war moves are going on right now, right? If you leave this building without starting some coalition that resists this war, then honestly, you know, you're not really looking at the people of the world, right? This war right now does not look good. They killed UN people. That must mean hundreds of children. I mean, we don't know, but don't expect the United States to be telling the truth. They're total liars about everything they do. Let's be real about this. They killed more than 1 million Iraqi children, or Iraqis and children, and they never put that out in the news. They never tell us about it, right? They've napalmed all kinds of people in Vietnam, all over the world. Do they put that out and tell you students that? Do they have do they make that required reading? No, you have to look it up in Howard's book here. We have got to resist this war, right? They talk about justice. Who's justice? These guys are the biggest perpetrators of injustice in the whole world. They are an evil empire. Let's be real about it.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Like, you're saying important things, but like, this is a prime time for people to ask questions and get answers. So do you want
I think if you want justice, you got to look towards a mass revolution, okay? And that's basically what I'm saying. And I think it's up to you as an organizer to think about it a little bit too. How are you going to get people to organize about this?
Thank you. Thank you. I heard you. Yes.
Well, I think the point he's making is great, but I'm reading a book now called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, if I pronounce it right. And the point that he makes is that we liberate ourselves from oppression by not only bringing those who are oppressed out of that, but bringing the oppressors out of that as well. So when you call it an evil empire, I think it's a little simplistic. But I would like to see I would like to see how you would respond to that in light of these.
Respond to calling us an evil empire?
Or just the two different perspectives. I mean, I think what he's saying is very important. But how would you...
What do you see as the difference between his perspective and mine, aside from his anger and my indifference?
What you are suggesting people should do at this point. What are you suggesting?
Oh, I'm not. I'm asking a question.
I think a lot of what he's saying is true. I mean, I wouldn't put it exactly that way, maybe, because I'm a moderate. But, saying a lot of true things. Way back there, yes?
Of what went wrong with the French Revolution and the role of the artist in society, and to my mind, that the received wisdom that you talked about the government is also just as black and white on the other side, that nowadays we have the received wisdom that everything that the government does is wrong, and unfortunately you hear a lot of that in what you're saying. And it seems to me that after coming back from Central Europe, where I've been working with a lot of gypsies, Roma, that a lot of the heroes of the Central European revolutions look at Ronald Reagan as a hero. What a shock that was to me going over there, coming out of the left as I have. And to my mind, it seems like when you talk about transcendence and stepping across it, the role of the artist, if you're going to have good art, as opposed to poster art, as a lot of my Central Europeans like to talk about politically correct art, that it's the paradoxes of life that is the most complicated. And the role of the artist is almost like a priestcraft, where you engage in this process of creativity, and you look at the received wisdom, you look at the unpopular truths, you delve into the difficulties, into the paradoxes, and out of that creative process comes something new, which we all have to do as citizens. It's not just enough to receive what comes from above or what comes from below, but to form our own identity. And that is always a very difficult process. I wish you'd comment on Schiller especially.
Well, I'll just say this about your comment, and that is, and I think you're pointing to the fact you can get received wisdom, which you should avoid, and which you should criticize, not just from people with power. There's such a thing as received wisdom from your friends, or received wisdom from the people, on your side. That is, there's a dogmatism that can come from all quarters. I mean, there's a dogmatism of the establishment, and there can be a dogmatism of the anti-establishment. But ultimately, and I think you're right about it, ultimately you have to, not just as an artist, but as an independent thinking citizen, you have to look at all of that, take in all of that, and not be bullied by anybody, including the people on your side. and think for yourself and come to your own conclusion. And then look for people who have come to the same conclusion, because as an individual, it's very hard to do anything in society. So you look for people who have come to the same conclusion, and you try to do things together. And always be alert for more dogmas and more restrictions placed on your thinking. Yes?
I basically have a question for the entire room, and it's a response to the angry person without soliciting what she's saying. Would everybody in this room be interested in changing anything in the world if it drops the value of their money? Yes. Because this is what this is about, once you get down to the nitty-gritty. I am not from here. Right now my life is on the American dollar, and I'm automatically implicated by that. And so are you. Your anger at the government is also your anger at yourself. It has to be. Because as long as the dollar is stable, this situation will exist in some form, somewhere. If any currency is stable, it necessitates that somebody is paying for it. So individually, I mean, the government picks up more criticism, perhaps, from people in this country as a whole. If the economy becomes unstable, then if they go to war. And that's implicated. It means something. So that's my question to everybody in this room is, would you change anything if it's going to affect your life? Because I'm not sure I would.
You say you're not sure you would, but I suspect you would. I remember seeing an ad some years ago, placed in the big ad in the New York Times, placed by Benton and Bowles, the advertising agency, and the ads just said in big letters, "If it doesn't sell, it's not art."
The way you could end the war is to open the doors to everybody from Islam who wants to leave. If you let them all leave and come to America, you destroy Islam. It would screw your economy.
I'm sorry, if you let them all come to America, you would do what?
If you let everybody who wanted to leave Islam
Yeah.
you'd screw them. I mean, just statistically speaking, this is not the answer, but I'm saying it's a completely different way of waging war.
Yes.
I'm just wondering what your personal take is on the gender implications of this. Because watching CNN, there's an endless procession of these guys, of George W. Bush, Osama bin Laden, and it really does seem like war is kind of a dick thing. Do you think some kind of hormone therapy or something?
War is a dick thing. The language that has been used in this hall tonight is shocking. Must I discuss hormones? There do seem to be a lot of men, but I actually resist the idea of dividing the men are the warriors and the women are the anti-warriors. I have too much experience with Margaret Thatcher and Kirkpatrick and Madeleine Albright and so on. But there is a macho thing which women can have too, right? It crosses gender lines, and it has to do with machismo and the idea of being tough and being strong, and I think there's a psychological element that enters into it, and you can see that in the language that's used and the posturing and the military men with the medals, and I mean there's something ironic about it. Here's the United States, by far the greatest military power in the world, needing to prove its manhood, needing to prove that it's tough, that it's strong. Yes.
Government has responded to in a positive way.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Historically, what has been done that people have done that the government has responded to positively?
What? Oh. Question, historically, what have people done that the government has responded to? I guess another way of putting it is, have there been occasions historically when people have been able to have an effect on government policy? Is that a fair statement? Well, yes. And I mean, you can, well, just take the United States, and you can go back to the anti-slavery movement, and which had a very powerful effect on Lincoln and the Congress. Slavery in this country didn't simply disappear because Abraham Lincoln became president and issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and Congress passed the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments. No, slavery became the object of a national movement, which started very small and became very strong from the 1830s to the 1860s, built up and created really a crescendo of pressure on Lincoln and on Congress, which I think had a very important effect on putting slavery at the center of the war towards the end, whereas at the beginning of the war, you may remember that Lincoln said, look, if I could end this war, if I could bring back the South without ending slavery, without touching slavery, I would do it. So that was different than the language of the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment. But, has the government responded to what people have done? Yes. Not easily. The government doesn't respond easily. But the legislation that we finally got in the 1930s of a minimum wage, Social Security, the laws that were passed in various states to give workmen's compensation to people who were injured, the subsidized housing, the job relief for people who are unemployed. And that came because in the 1930s there were great movements of people in the country which threw the country into turmoil. There were strikes all over the country. There were sit-down strikes where people occupied the factories. There were general strikes in Minneapolis and San Francisco, tying up the entire city. There were marches of the unemployed and tenants movements defying the police and putting people's furniture back into their houses when they were evicted. There was all sorts of turmoil in the country, so that what we call the legislation in the New Deal did not simply happen because Roosevelt was a kind man and decided to do these things. There may have been some kindness there, but his kindness was very much strengthened by the fact that the country was in turmoil. And, there's lots of other history, right, that you can point to about where what people did had an effect on what the government did. I mean, the movement against the war in Vietnam, the civil rights movement, right? The government did nothing to enforce the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. The government, essentially every president of the United States for almost 100 years violated his oath of office by not enforcing the 14th Amendment, because every president swears to see to it that the laws are faithfully executed, and the 14th Amendment was allowed to die until the 1950s and 60s when black people rose up in the South, and then finally you began to get changes in the Southern system of racial segregation. Then we had the movement against the war in Vietnam. And we had the women's movement, which, well, yes, the reason we have any kind of affirmative action for women and for other people came because of the movements of the 1960s. The reason we had Medicare and the all the things that were done in the 1960s to make people's lives a little better came as a result of the great movements of the 1960s. We have a more recent example of where disabled people created a force in this country and finally got the government to pass laws so that disabled people had the right to access to public places. I mean, those indentations that you see on the sidewalk these days were not always there. They were not there 30 or 40 years ago, but they were put there as a result of a movement of the disabled people in this country. So, there's a lot. Yeah. The major point is that, yes, it is possible to change government policy by citizen action if people are persistent enough and take risks and organize and create a national commotion. Yes.
Thank you. And thank you, Doctor. My question is for an historian. And the premise is that we are in a race against time as the textbooks manufacturers have to submit their manuscripts to major states for approval before they can be published. Now, as an author and a historian, what advice would you give on how the final chapter should be written, which would include the events of September 11th and the present bombings that are taking place?
How should a historian write about the events of September 11th? Well, and were you asking me in answering that to take into consideration the fact that the publishers are concerned about what will sell?
The publishers have to have them approved by Texas, California, and New York, as you well know. And in order to do that, they have to, by their own publishing mandates, enter into a timeline.
Yes.
In order to get them published and into the hands of students in 2010 September.
Right.
They're in that. That's not. In order to do that, they have to write the events now, and they have to be proven prolific by next September. What advice would you give them?
I would say ignore the publishers. That if you know in advance that if you write something which is unorthodox now about September 11th, it's not going to be approved, right? I mean, that's what you're implying. Since it's not going to be approved, then there's no point going through the regular publishing channels. And the thing to do is write outside the regular publishing channels, look for publishers, independent publishers. If you're a school teacher, don't use the regular textbook, but look for materials that go outside the boundaries, photocopy them, distribute them to your class. I mean, when my book first came out, A People's History of the United States, high school teachers, college teachers have more leeway, but high school teachers were not allowed to use my book as a text for their high school classes. So what they did was they photocopied chapters and secretly distributed them, turned out the lights in the classroom. So yes, you have to, you have to engage in a kind of guerrilla warfare with the publishing establishment if you want to tell the truth. Yes.
The point is, we're at a crucial crossroads here. The world is never going to be the same because of September 11th.
Yes.
It's not a time to write books. It's a time to resist an unjust war. And we have to really debate whether or not that's the case. I believe strongly it's totally an unjust war. They're lying to us in the papers. They're lying to us on the evening news. If people don't think that way, let's have some debate about that right here, because we're making history right here, in a sense, by having a meeting that's not supposed to be taking place at a public institution that's not supposed to be hosting this kind of a meeting because the government's at war. But if we don't agree with that war, what are we prepared to do to oppose it, resist it, minimize the loss of innocent lives, and everything that entails? Because Bush has already said it's not going to stop in Afghanistan. He's already picking out other countries that they want to reshuffle the deck so they can more fruitfully exploit the resources. And like you said, up the ante for the economy of the United States, continue fucking over the rest of the world. And we can debate about that. We need to debate about it, but let's find a way to resist it.
Whoever speaks up first will have the floor.
What gives you strength to keep standing up and standing up all the time, in your own words, when you feel that you are resisting the party line, that you are going against boundaries? Because I believe you have credibility in my eyes. Like Ezra Pound, the poet, says that someone that has experience, has real experience, has credibility. And since I think you're credible, I want to know really physically, what gives you that feeling to keep standing up? What is it?
No, it's a good question. I try to go among people that I like, and people with senses of humor, and people who make me feel life is worth living, and listen to music and go to the movies and, read good books and root for your favorite baseball team when you're not reading the newspapers and reading books on history and politics and international affairs. In other words, and this is where the artist comes in very importantly, while you're working for a better world, you have to make the world that you're living in right now pleasant for yourself and enjoyable for yourself, even while the powers that be are trying to destroy your enjoyment. Yes.
It's been my observation that these movements in safety ruin the credibility of liberal left. They've been abandoned by popular media. And at this point,
Before you go further, I can't hear a word.
I'm sorry. I'll try to speak up. It's been my observation that the peace movement of the 60s ruined the credibility of the liberal left in popular culture. The media abandoned the liberal left after the Vietnam War ended. And as if you take people as artists who are attempting to affect social change, the biggest wars that we have to fight is that we are preaching to converters. I want your advice on how we reach the whole country, how we reach everyone. Run for office. Be prepared to become a politician. Because the liberal left, I don't think, was devalued. Nobody was prepared to enter the platform that is to attack it.
I just want to respond to that because, I understand your point, but as a New Yorker, as an American, I've thought for years that we take for granted what our parents did. And to say that the peace movement devalued the radical left is absurd, because we don't appreciate that we can walk into a restaurant and sit down whomever we want. We can ride on the train with whomever we want. It was the media, it was the conservative backlash, and I understand what you were saying about trying to access people, but saying that plays into the people who have taken away the value of what the civil rights movement and the gay rights and the women's movement have done. We can't use that kind of language to feed into that because it just supports it. And I think somebody applauding in the back, you may have your point of view, but why are we turning on people in a decade, in a couple of decades, who fought, put their lives on their line, who may be living in poverty, who may be suffering from drug abuse or diseases, for everything they lived during that time? I just have to say. Yeah.
But in addition to making that point about the left and the 60s and so on, I think she was asking the question, how do you reach the country? Isn't that right? How do you speak to the whole country? Especially when they don't let you. Especially, they don't, you noticed, they invite everybody to be an expert on CNN, on NBC, ABC, on Little Era Report, and right? Do they ever invite Noam Chomsky? Once they did? Did they really?
One time, I thought
It's possible. It's possible he passed before your eyes in a flash. Yeah. But the point is, what's that?
They had Susan Sontag last week.
Oh, it had Susan Sontag. Well, that's good. This is not a totalitarian state. It's just a 90% control, you see. And there are apertures and openings. We have to take advantage of all those apertures and openings. But mostly the major media are closed to who you are and what you're doing. Speak to your friends and neighbors. The most important thing is for people to speak out, not to be quiet, not to be intimidated. Use the internet. I have found that the email that I've been getting, I'm only recently in my life became aware of email. And I know some of you were born with email. Maybe, you were delivered through instructions on email, you see. But through email, I've been getting all sorts of information that I don't see in the press, that I don't see on major television networks. So there are ways to get things out, and if I hadn't read my email, I wouldn't know that there are families of people who died in New York in that tragedy, of families who are coming forward and saying, please don't bomb. That is not what my son would have wanted. That's not what my husband would have wanted. I wouldn't know about these families and their responses if I didn't have this means of communication. So we have to use every possible means we have. It's a tough uphill fight, but we've got to do it. Yes. I'm sorry. Mention people who what?
Acted as catalysts. Mention people who acted as catalysts more than commentators. Is that correct?
Yes. As catalysts more than commentators.
Yeah, right. Artists that acted as catalysts.
You mean artists who are activists?
Not just artists who are active, but artists who are active through their artwork.
Oh, active through their artwork.
You talk about people who speak out, but you give, when you think of examples of people who were influential in their artwork, that actually influenced people and changed them?
John Lennon, if anybody.
What's that?
After John Lennon, if anybody.
Rage Against the Machine.
Billy Bragg. Ani DeFranco. Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam speaks out from time to time.
My follow-up question is, I think we all think about as artists preaching to the converted and just expressing ourselves without anyone paying attention. Have you thought about what qualities make an work of art influential to people who otherwise wouldn't listen?
Don't worry about controlling other people, just say it. I think. Say it, it's okay, use your voice. You can't control the whole world, but if we all speak up, we all speak up.
It's also how you speak up. You sound like he was coming from a perspective of anger before, and it should come from a perspective of, for lack of a better word, love. So we come from that perspective. That way you're not repeating a pattern. So that was my objection to before. There's evil is a lack of empathy, many people think.
Hey, I want to say something.
Before anybody else leaves, I think that if you're kind of lost like I am on how to do, what to do, I think the best thing that you can do is look for the truth yourself and to just keep informed. That's the best thing. is to just go for all sources of information. Just keep yourself informed. That's your duty as citizens of this country.
By the way, do you all, I forget, was it announced the Copley Square rally on Sunday?
There's a group called Space that is having a meeting at the basement of the Kennedy building right after this, like at 8 o'clock. And they're artists, and they're trying to organize other artists to think about these issues in their work. So I recommend, if you guys are interested, going to the meeting. What was the other?
Well, this Sunday, 3 o'clock, Copley Square, there's going to be a gathering of people speaking out against the war.
There's also a citywide group, and I'm not remembering their name right now, but I think that they meet at 7 o'clock on Mondays. And there's also a group called the Boston Campus Anti-War Coalition, that's students from campuses all over Boston that are meeting at 12:30 this Sunday at 96 Stevens Street at Emerson College. And we've been meeting every Sunday to talk and organize things. So anybody that wants to come out, you don't have to be a student, anyone that wants to come out there, it's 12:30 this Sunday, 96 Stevens Street.
Sir, you spoke very eloquently on the Declaration of Independence and extending inalienable rights to all people of the world and globalization, and how we need to view the inalienable rights as belonging to every person in the world. Yet you oppose war and you oppose sanctions. How do you propose that we extend those individual rights against violent regimes like the Taliban, whose sole purpose is to suppress those individual rights? What is the way to let those people have those rights without violence and without...
Yes. Very good question. Yeah, there are regimes around the world which are suppressing individual rights and human rights, and I talked about human rights needing to be extended to everybody in the world. Now, there are limits to what we can do in extending human... We do as much as we can. The Taliban is an evil regime. It has been an evil regime for some time. We only discovered its evil like yesterday. See, but the Taliban was evil when it was allied with the United States a number of years ago, when the United States helped create the Taliban. And what I'm suggesting is that the United States doesn't have a good record in acting against tyrannical regimes in other parts of the world. The record of the United States is generally in supporting or instituting repressive regimes in other parts of the world. So yes, we face a problem as people concerned with the rights of women in Afghanistan and the rights of people in Iraq, of what do we do about that? And the problem is, how do we gain human rights? How do we support human rights? How do we help people act against repressive regimes without killing more people? Now, the sanctions against Iraq, we are not helping the people of Iraq by consigning hundreds of thousands of them to their deaths. We are not helping the women of Afghanistan by bombing Afghanistan. We are creating terror in Afghanistan. I don't know if the Taliban is terrorized, but the people who live in Kabul are terrorized. Can you imagine living in Kabul right now, and the lights are all out, and you don't have any power in a city which already is desperate and poor, and you're living in constant fear of the airplanes coming over, and you know that the airplanes can hit your house as well as hit some airfield. I mean, yes, we have a problem of doing something about tyranny all over the world, but the one clear thing in my mind is that you don't solve those problems by violence and war. You have to find other ways of doing that. That is the great challenge before us in this century. How to deal with tyranny, how to deal with inequality, how to deal with poverty, and how to do it without killing a lot of people. And you cannot trust the governments of the world, especially the powerful governments of the world, to make their first priority human rights. Their record shows that's not so. It will take citizens' movements in our country joining citizens' movements in other countries to forge international bonds of solidarity in order to help to overthrow those governments and establish decent societies. And we have to do that everywhere in the world, and we even have to do it here.
Excuse me, one last question, and this guy's been waiting a long time, so we'll let him ask the question.
I appreciate that. Actually, this has to do with what he was just saying and what the guy over here was just saying. I thought the best thing about what you were talking about when you were speaking was that we need to be honest, and that is the most important value in the world, period. I think the way we can address this, and the way we can address every terrorist act, every problem with war we've been having, what we really can do is force our government. The most disturbing thing that I'm hearing from George Bush, and that it seems 90% of the population of the country are believing, the most disturbing thing he said is that the reason this happened, the reason we were attacked, is because we're the brightest beacon of freedom. That is the most bullshit I've ever heard about. That makes no sense. So, my solution, as to what you were saying, is that we need full disclosure. We need to force full disclosure about what led up to this in the first place, having to do with Saudi Arabia, Israel, Palestine, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm hoping that Ben, as an historian, can give us, some details. I haven't finished your book yet. Maybe it's here. What led up to this? What put these guys in the situation of wanting to do what they did? Because it had nothing to do with our culture and the way we live, except for the fact that we've been shoving it down their throats.
Okay, let me say something. Let me just say something about that, because I think it was a great omission in my talk when I talked about looking for the roots of terrorism, and I didn't really get into what I think is crucial. And I think you're right. The terrorists are not attacking us because we're liberal and democratic and rational as opposed to their irrationality, and secular as opposed to their fundamentalism. We have our own fundamentalism. But I think there are, beneath that, the fanaticism that led to that violence in New York, there are genuine grievances which are held not just by those terrorists, but are held by large numbers of people throughout the Middle East. And, of course, large numbers of people around the world, too. They have grievances against what American policy has been ever since World War II. Grievances against the way we supported repressive regimes in all of these places. Their immediate grievances in the Middle East are, yes, the refusal of the United States to insist that Israel leave the occupied territories, and the continued giving billions and billions of dollars to Israel in arms, and of course we give it to the Arab states too. We've been arming all the sides of all wars for years and watching them kill one another while our businesses have made profit off the arms race. We have to take a very honest look at American foreign policy and how that has created deep anger at the United States. Our policy in Israel, the sanctions against Iraq, and the stationing of troops in Saudi Arabia. Now, you can expand that and say the stationing of troops everywhere. If our government is going to station troops in 19 major military bases around the world, and many more minor bases around the world, is going to station warships on every sea, is going to have troops in Korea, and troops in Okinawa, and troops in Japan, and troops in the Middle East, and now troops in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. If you are going to maintain a military presence all over the world, you are going to anger people. And so there are legitimate grievances that we have to be addressed. We need a re-examination of American policy in the world. We have to start thinking we must not be the military superpower in the world. If we are going to be a superpower in the world, let us be a moral superpower in the world.
do here tonight, because we listen, we walk away, we feel good, but we haven't done a goddamn thing except feel good. You have to get out and work. And the press conferences back there with Tommy Almiano and Ralph Nader, the press keeps asking, well, how can the people focus on this, given what's going on in the world and given the bombing and the violence and things that happened in New York? Well, it is our job not to have people forget about that, but to have them understand that there are other things going on in our life that we have to be with, and that is the job that I have to do, and I'm committed to do it. That's the job that you all have to do. That's the jobs you have to get your friends and neighbors to do that didn't come here tonight, because this is our last and only chance to get public power in San Francisco. If we cannot do it after what the utilities have done to us this year, we're never going to get it. And so again, I want to thank you for coming. I pledge to work from now until Election Day, and I hope you all would do the same. So let's keep it up and get power in the hands of the people. And we always said in the 60s, power to the people, but now we're really talking about it. Electrical power to the people. Thank you very much.
So when voting comes around, it's yes on I, yes on F, yes on H, yes on B. That's yes on I, F, H, B. If you need a mnemonic device, it's I feel hell-bent. We were warned today by George Bush to watch out for suspicious characters. You may see some suspicious characters in the audience, but it's okay. They're from Greenpeace. And they're coming up. They should be coming up here. Here they come. Suspicious Greenpeacers.
Most of the country is trapped in the darkness of fossil fuel dependence. However, there are a few who are beginning to see the light. Here in California, the beautiful golden state of California, after suffering through a long, hard energy crisis, we are beginning to search for alternatives. Solar woman here. Some sort of superhero I am. I mean, I represent the most ancient energy source there is, the sun. I have a dream of a clean, beautiful energy future. But here I am, alone, on this dejected street corner, while my arch enemy, Dr. Fossil, holds the world in a vice grip, abusing it at whim, spewing CO2 into the atmosphere, digging strip mines for coal, destroying rainforests for oil. Yeah, we go way back. The last 100 years we've been battling it out. No one seems to see that solar is the way to go. I mean, the world... The world is going to hell in a fossil fuel-filled handbag, and no one seems to see it. Oh, look, here she is now in her new SUV limousine.
Isn't life beautiful? Can't you just smell that pollution? It's like having
fuel these days. My fossil fuel empire is nearly complete. There's a few more places to drill, but I'm going to seek them out, and then we'll have more coal, more gas, and more oil! Well, I've been brainwashing all of you people for years now, very successfully. I am the status quo, and I'm rolling in the dough. But the best thing of all, just give it a couple more years, global warming will cause the sea to rise up and wash away all those pesky Californians that just don't seem to get the fossil fuels the only way. Especially in San Francisco, those white folks have gotten some crazy ideas into their head lately. Hey, Kathleen, check it out! Amazing energy propositions in today's newspaper. You know what? I heard about those last week. I think it's B, H, F, and I. Between them, they bring in 70 megawatts of solar energy. Wow! That's huge! I mean, we've been needing solar energy for years now. But I have a question. Is Houston still sunny enough for solar energy? Well, it says right here they're going to be putting it on the sunny side of the city. And solar panels work even when it's cloudy. Solar woman, where did you come from? Solar woman? 17 megawatts? It's unprecedented. It's going to nearly double the current solar energy output of the entire United States. And it's a revenue bond, so it won't even raise taxes. Don't listen to her. Who wants change? Change is scary. Look at me, I'm familiar. You're used to fossil fuels. You know what you're getting with me. No. Solar is the only way to go. We must change our energy future if life is going to continue on this planet as we know it. But what about all those beautiful things that I have brought you? Colorful snow. What about global warming? But the beautiful shimmering oil spills. Destruction of ecosystems. Tropical temperatures. Drought. Floods. Disease. Disaster. War. Catastrophe! No! I won't let this happen. My fossil fuel empire is nearly complete. We will have fossil fuels whether you like it or not. Fossil fuels! Quit the bus! It's your only hope! It's so refreshing to see people who realize that solar is the way to go and are willing to do something about it. Propositions B and H are going to start an energy revolution. My dream has come true. We did it! But we still must beware because Dr. Fossil and her evil corporations are only down for a short time. For now, our best defense against them is to ballot box. Well, yes, on I, F, H, and B on November 6th. Go yes!
Good evening. My name is Van Jones, and I'm here representing the anti-prison and criminal justice activists who have signed on to this campaign. I want to say just very briefly, in the interest of time, two things. First of all, California is leading the nation in spending on incarceration, yet we are 42, trailing the nation in spending on education. We deserve a state government and a city government that will invest billions and millions in a green economy, not a gulag economy, and that's why we're working on this campaign. That's why we're coming together. Second, in a time like this campaign is a bright star in a black sky. It is so important that we take this seriously and that we win this thing. We need a victory in this country right now. We need to send a signal that there are no throwaway children, no throwaway resources, no throwaway neighborhoods, and no throwaway nations in our world today. In closing, now is the time for giants. Now is the time for giants. The media is celebrating the giants of war. Let us be the giants of cooperation, the giants of unity, and the giants of peace, and let us show the world what we can do when we come together. Thank you very much.
That was Van Jones from the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, anti-prison activist. I guess, are we back to normalcy yet? I don't know what that means. I think it means seeing commercials on TV for things that they say ask your doctor about, such as Pravachol is my favorite. Pravachol prevents your first and second heart attack. So that when you have your third attack, you think it's your first. I want to introduce Peter Camejo. He is the chair of the board of the Progressive Asset Management and Investment Firm with offices in 16 states. He was appointed by the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors as a trustee to the county's $3 billion pension fund, and by the Lieutenant Governor of Hawaii as a financial advisor to the Hawaii Capital Stewardship Fund. In 1968, then Governor Ronald Reagan called Peter Camejo, quote, one of the most dangerous people in California. Here he is.
In San Diego, a company called, housing company called Shea and Astro Power Solar Energy Company came together and they built 200 homes and they put solar on it. They were able to do it for 2 kilowatts for $10,000 on a 30-year mortgage at 6.5%. That's cheaper than the grid. Solar is cost effective today. You have to ask yourself, why is it we only have 100,000 homes in the United States with solar on it? The $1.3 trillion tax cut that Bush outlined could put solar on every single home in the United States. Think how much better that would be for our economy, for peace in the world, than to give 80% of this money to the wealthiest people who don't need it. As some of you know, I'm associated with the Green Party. Right now we're working on creating a 25-year plan to turn California into 100%, essentially 100% renewable energy. And the point I want to drive home to you is that this can be done. It is cost effective. It works. It can happen. There's all kinds of new technologies. There's technologies now to use solar power that will improve the production of a natural gas plant by 10 to 30%. They're doing it in Arizona. They're not doing it in California. We have a governor whose motto is pay to play, who is an expert on buying things at the highest possible price and selling them real low, and who's running radio ads to brag that he is building more polluting plants than anyone ever has before. You know, we have as a people the right to an energy policy that's based on science, not greed. It really is that simple. And I consider it an absolute national embarrassment that it has come out that the president's father, who also happens to be once a president, is in business with the Ben Laden family in Saudi Arabia. And the reason I find that such an embarrassment is there's nobody does business in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a totalitarian society of a small clique in partnership with American corporations so that the natural resource of that region doesn't go to the people of the region who desperately need resources, but goes to American corporations and to this small clique. No one does business in Saudi Arabia. It is simply a corrupt stealing of the resources of the region for a small clique. These people are anti-Semitic. They practice apartheid against women, and they're opposed to democracy, and you'll never hear one word of criticism in our media of these regimes, as long as they do what the United States tells them to do. You know, I don't see how people can be so naive not to see that there's some connection between the tragedy of what has happened in our nation and this reality. Do you realize that more people in Afghanistan know their country is being accused of, their government is being accused of being pro-terrorist than Americans know that the government of the United States was found guilty of terrorism by the World Court in 1985 by a vote of 14-1. And we have 24 hours a day television coverage. What we need is a real debate in America, a real discussion of real alternatives. And part of the problem we have in getting there is that when people try to run for office, they're called spoilers. You know the solution? It is so simple, it is ridiculous. You have runoffs. They have runoffs in Los Angeles. You ever heard of Los Angeles? Well, hello, let's do it. Let's have runoffs, and nobody is spoiling. The Democratic and Republican Party won't allow it. They want to be able to accuse people for wanting to tell their view of what should be done, for expressing a point of view, for running for office like the Green Party. Then they call you a spoiler when all you need is runoffs. And it's on the ballot here in San Francisco in March. There's a way with computers today to simply do it as one election. And I want to encourage you to vote for that and to support it. And let me end by just saying that these things are all interrelated. The right, you can't find the truth without conflict of ideas. We've got to have democracy and freedom, not only in the United States, but throughout the world, to be able to stop the type of crisis that we now face. Thank you.
I just embraced one of the 10 most dangerous men in America. It feels good. All right, remember, IFHB, yes, I feel hell-bent. I was wrong before. I'd like to make a correction. It's when you have your first heart attack, you think it's your third. But it didn't make any difference. So there are some people who don't need any introduction. So I won't give the next speaker one. I'll just say the president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, Tom Amiano.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. As mayor of the Emerald City, it's true, I am president of the Board of Supervisors, and I am one president you can believe when I say I have never slept with that woman. San Francisco has the chance to make history, and I think we're going to make it. We have 4 ballot measures in November that deal with public power, that deal with solar power. Don't let the sun catch you crying is what we used to say in the 60s. We're not going to let the sun catch us crying in San Francisco. There is a non-sexy part to this issue, and that non-sexy part is about donations, about shoe leather, about ringing doorbells, and about house signs. And that's what we need from you the most, and I know you will deliver. People say, what is public power? Public power is a populist issue. Populist issues aren't always necessarily left or right or Republican or Democrat or gay or straight. Populist issues are populist issues. Populist issues mean fuck you, PG and E. You want a reason to vote for public power? Look at your PG&E bill. That's all the reason that people need. And they need to be reminded of that. And that's what we're going to remind them about by a grassroots effort to return the ability to determine what our rates are, who's going to get that money. We're not going to give it to investors. We're not going to raise the salaries of the board of directors before we go bankrupt. We're not going to do that. We're going to make history. We're going to make history tonight, and we're going to make history in November. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Now comes a pair of activists, and we need all the activists we can get, so when that clipboard comes around, be sure to spell your name right for volunteers. Okay, now a dynamic duo to bleed you dry, and we all need to give blood. Ross Mirkarimi, the coordinator of the Mud Campaign, and Greg Kafuri, the co-creator of the Ralph Nader Super Rallies, which culminated in Madison Square Garden with 19,500 enthusiastic people. Here they are, Ross and Greg.
First of all, I just want to ask, does everybody have one of these yellow cards? If you don't, raise your hands and our volunteers will come around and get them to you. Raise your hands, and our volunteers, our great, trusty, wonderful volunteers will get this to you. My name is Ross Mirkarimi, and this is a very exciting event, an incredible night, because we're on the heels of an amazing campaign right now. I want to tell you about a campaign. It's a great campaign. This kind of campaign that we're conducting right now is building up a roar in the face of an opposition that is trying so miraculously, so deceitfully to preserve its monopoly on the greed that it takes. That particular company who is fighting so hard to preserve its assets is PG&E. It's you and me against PG&E, friends. In fact, say it with me. You and me against PG&E. Say it again. You and me against PG&E. One more time. You and me against PG&E. Why is that? Well, let me tell you why. With nearly the 4 weeks to go in this particular election, PG&E and its utility allies, AT&T and Pac Bell and other friends, are resorting to such manipulative type commercials that they're invoking the tragedy of September 11th. If you haven't seen them yet, you should, because I believe you'll want to volunteer 24 hours, 7 days a week. The very fact that they would even resort to this kind of tactic only tells us that they're scared. And that's great, because what we've done is stitched together in an amazing alliance, even unseen here in San Francisco in some years, where you have the Democratic Party, you have the Green Party, you have the San Francisco Labor Council, AFL-CIO, you have just about every elected official, and this incredible alliance of Ralph Nader, State Senator John Burton, Tom Amiano. What's going on here? And the very fact is what's going on is that we feel the possibilities that we can win. And that for the last 85 years, because of PG&E's efficacy in City Hall and in the Board of Supervisors and in the courts in trying to prevent the mandate that was provided to San Franciscans that they should have affordable power, PG&E has been a very worthy opponent in stopping us from obtaining those gains. Well, it all comes down to the next 3.5 weeks, and those next 3.5 weeks are going to be propelled by the most amazing grassroots campaign, even in the face of the tragedies that one would feel distracted or whose attention is not quite focused on the reality of what we might be able to move with very little. That is at the stage that we're at. And so we're incredibly gratified by the people that have come here tonight to show their support in such a unique way. And I ask you to join me in this much further in showing your support. And before I continue this remark, I'm going to ask my partner here, Greg, to also explain to you how it is that we are going to advance to victory over the next 3.5 weeks. Greg.
Thank you. We are going to be raising funds in a few minutes. If you don't have the card, raise your hand. We'll get you one. And if you need a pen or a pencil, raise your hand. We'll get you one. The funds are going to be shared by Democracy Rising, which I'm going to discuss in a few minutes, and the MUD campaign. It's an honor to be introduced by Paul Krasner, the consummate 60s figure, a man who talked about how he spent a summer afternoon in 1968 clinging to the grass in a park because he was afraid he was going to fall into the sky. When I met him today, I said, you know, Paul, a lot of us have been feeling that way lately. It's becoming collective. It's obvious that this country is in a tight spot, and it is equally obvious that in order to figure out how we can get out of it, it is necessary that we first figure out how we got into it. And yet it's not going to be easy. We awoke this morning to the news that Condoleezza Rice had called the 5 CEOs of the 5 TV networks, and all 5 had agreed that videos by Mr. bin Laden would never again be shown on television to the American people. Struggling for an excuse for why they were doing this, they said, well, you know, like CNN might broadcast it worldwide to Indonesia and people might riot. This evening, the news is that the White House has asked every newspaper in America to never again publish the words of Mr. bin Laden or the words coming out of Afghanistan. It is not enough that people are trying to kill us. Now our government is also trying to keep us dumb and blind. That's how bad things are, ladies and gentlemen. Did you ever imagine that you'd see a day when in the United States of America, those who wanted to go to primary sources for their news would have to find a way to tune in Al Jazeera? The corporate press and its freeze out of the Ralph Nader campaign last year was the reason why we persuaded Ralph to rent the Memorial Coliseum in Portland, where, charging admission, he sold out 10,500 people, packed the place to the rafters, and the next morning, cynical old activist that I am, I nonetheless knew that the New York Times couldn't ignore this. We had to be on the front page. I ran out in my slippers and my bathrobe to my front porch and picked up the Times, and we weren't on page 1, we weren't on page 21. And the super rallies were essentially ignored by the corporate press until the debate format was safely put in a lockbox and the Nader campaign had nowhere to go. 9 cities Nader spoke at, to huge audiences, people who understood that if they want their own politics, they have to pay for it. People who paid to help defray the expenses of these expensive auditoriums, and we learned then that what needs to be done to carry on our progressive message is that we needed to create a new organization that is Democracy Rising. Democracy Rising is created for the purpose of taking Mr. Nader to city after city after city so that the progressive message can be delivered by its greatest messenger, and so that at the same time local campaigns like this magnificent MUD campaign that you have here can gain new money, can gain new volunteers, can gain new activists, so that other progressive campaigns and progressive struggles can set up tables and they can recruit people to come and they can say, take a look at what we've got, get interested in what we're doing, so the progressive local campaigns and the progressive national campaign can together strengthen and reinforce one another. The key to it is that people have to be willing to pay if they want to have their own politics. I have heard forever that what we need to do is organize at the grassroots. That's the answer. And I've seen magnificent activists knock their head against the wall and occasionally win great victories, but nonetheless, we still slip further behind. What we have here is a mechanism that can have legs, that can be self-sustaining, that can move, that can help the progressive movement in America grow, as we are helping MUD grow tonight, all of us. And so, as we tonight in this room represent the progressive beating heart of America, I ask you to help us, by your contributions, take our national campaign onto Boston, onto Chicago, around the country, at the same time that you help the MUD campaign go to historic one chance in 50-year victory over the utility that has oppressed you for so long.
He's very good, isn't he? I think so. Who here, by the way, was at the great super rally last year at the Kaiser Convention Center? Raise your hand. Let me tell you something. I don't know where I mustered up that particular, confidence to come out before you then, and with Greg, ended up raising a record for, I think, a lot of us, $92,000 on the floor from that particular pitch. And if that's a precursor of what you know it's about to come, you're right. The very fact is that they are spending multi-millions of dollars against us, a lot in the high-tech media campaign that's being waged. Our money's going to go very selectively towards a targeted campaign, and those 85,000 voters or so, we're going to get them all, and we're going to win. And how we're going to win, let's hear it. Just give me a big roar. Ask you, who here can give me a check for $1,000? Silence. Who here, I'm serious, raise your hand if somebody here can write a check for $1,000 and you write that check to the MUD Now campaign. It's an incredibly awkward experience, but let me tell you, it's really fulfilling. Raise your hand. Who here can give $1,000? This money will be applied towards all the four of the campaigns. This great banner, which reflects MUD, Proposition F, and our Solar's H and B. So who here can give $1,000? This is a lot to ask for. Anyone here, raise your hand. If I can't see you because of the lights, just yell.
Come on, we need a hero. Somebody stand up.
I see. I don't even know these. Stand up.
Woo!
Say your name, please. This is...
My name is Siem Ben Mahmoud, and I was born in France, so I'm not American, but I'm willing to do it because I'm...
Thank you.
I find that so outrageous. I'm from France, and when I see that you have to pay in order to have democracy, that's ridiculous. That makes everything I see in the news and everything I see in the political system here make me laugh. That's like, I could not believe that it can happen in America. So that's why I'm doing that.
Well, thank you very much. We just write the check to MUD Now. We accept American Express checks. Yes, we do. Any more international? Leave it to the French to tell the American. Anyone else for $1,000? Raise your hand. Sir, come on. I see. All right. Anyone else for $1,000? Raise your hand.
Well, we can't let France outspend the city, can we? That's pretty embarrassing.
Raise your hand. Who here can? This is an historical event unto itself.
You can even put it on a credit card. So it's not like you have to pay for it.
That's right. That's what these yellow forms are for. Put it on a credit card so we can recognize you. Who else would like to give $1,000?
One more so we can move on. Come on, somebody.
Right over here. What's your name? What's your name? You can economize, get 10 people together, $1,000, $100 apiece. It's great. All right, who here, I'm not going to be chicken, we're going to go, okay, $500. Who here can give a check for $500? It's Neil Eisenberg. Neil Eisenberg has been intimately involved with our campaign, is helping script, the MUD organization and initiative to help brought us here, and he's running for city attorney. Thank you, $500.
Since I wrote the initiative, I'm in favor of it. And I'm running for city attorney to enforce the Raker Act, power to the people.
Who else can give $500? Raise your hand. Who else can give $500? Denise Deanne, right there, can give $500. All right, Denise. Woo! I can't see all hands, so who else can give $500? You make the check to the Mud Now campaign. Who else can give $500? Phil Wilkie, I know you. Come on up. All right.
And anyone who gives $100 or more gets a copy of the Ralph Nader Reader, writings of Ralph going back 35 years. It is an extraordinary inspiration, and it is signed for Justice Ralph Nader. Anybody who gives $100. Any more $500 contributors? These people will tell you why you should.
Come on up. Come on up. Just say hello real quickly.
$500, I want to have my say. There is a question that it has nothing related to this, well, somewhat, is if the guy who blew up the Muir building, what's his name? No, the other one. McVeigh, I'm sorry, ex-McVeigh. If he were involved in this tragedy in New York, what would be the consequences? Will we be bombing ourselves? Thank you.
The Green Party is where the action is. Join the Green Party.
Would you like to say anything or can I just say your name? Okay.
I have never been to one of these rallies in San Francisco, well, probably not for more than 15 years, and I'm so glad to be here because I finally feel like I'm listening to people who think like me, because it's been a little intimidating lately to have another opinion.
We are not alone. We are not alone. Anybody else can give a check for $500 to the Mud Now campaign. Anyone else can give, raise your hands. Right here. Leanna Louie is a Mudboard candidate as well.
Good evening. I have a terrible sore throat, so please forgive me. Actually, $500 is practically nothing to run this campaign, and if we could all give a little bit, no matter what amount, we could win this cause. I hope you will vote yes on I, yes on B, and H and F in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other hands? Any other hands? All right, who here can give $250, a check for $250? Raise your hands.
Get the Ralph Nader Reader autograph for $250.
Touched by John Burton and Tom Amiano. I don't know where I got that from.
Is that at $250?
So I see a hand for $250. Stand up and be counted. Well done. You too. Oh, great.
All right.
Lateral. We love it. I'd say your name, but I can't hear you. Thank you. Anyone else for $250?
How much do you hate PG&E, huh? How much? Who would you rather write a check to, us or them?
Let me tell you, $250 under public power will save you 6 months of costs. Anyone else for $250? Where?
Come on.
I love you. Over here. Thank you. Anyone else? You write the check to Mud Now for $250. Any other hands?
Yeah.
You got it. In fact, thank you for... We actually have received in the mail about 10 rebate checks. What a great way to... You can just endorse it over. Who are you? Of course you can. People didn't want to book. Sustainable Technologies. They're too young for a bank account.
Somebody bring us some books.
See? This is Sage and Casey, folks. And they just gave $300 from Sustainable Technologies. Well done, gentlemen. Thank you.
Somebody get some books for these boys, okay? Somebody get some books for them. Come on, bring in a bunch of books.
All right. All right. Speech. Come up here. Speech. Say something. It's your time.
Okay. World peace!
It can't all be done by French women and little children. We need everybody's help. Anybody else for $250 and a Ralph Nader reader?